Hello everyone, let's get started. In this video, we will cover how to solve and factor polynomial equations. The first part is going to be about factoring, and then in the second part, we will see how to solve the equations. The first step is always looking for the common terms that we can take out. In this question, the first one, it says factor 24x squared minus 42x minus 45. So if I look at the numbers, I see that I can take out 3 from each one of these numbers. Take out 3 from 24, we get 8x squared. Do the same thing for negative 42, we get 14x minus 15. Now at this point, I'm going to use a different method than the regular one. If you already know what the regular method is and how it looks like, you should know that it requires a lot of work to show, but this method doesn't require too much work to show. So first break down this term, 8x squared, whatever that term is, break it down. 4x times 2x gives me 8x squared. Now 15 is 3 times 5. Now we need to play with the signs, do some cross multiply, add, and then try to get negative 14 and negative 15. So here's the thing. The first thing that we need to look is, when we multiply these two numbers, we need to get negative 15, which means either this one or that one is going to be negative. So I'm going to go with this one and then try to see what happens if I do a cross multiply. If I multiply 4x by negative 5, I get negative 20x. If I do the same thing with these two, I get 6x. Once we add these together, the sum would be negative 14x, which is exactly what I'm looking for. So right now, I know that 4x and 3 should be paired, and 2x and negative 5 should be paired. The ones on the same row should be paired. When we factor it, there was a 3 outside of it. Now 4x minus 3 should be in the same parentheses times 2x minus 5 would be the final answer of this one. Let's move on to the next question. 4f squared minus 64x. This looks like the difference of two squares, but right now they're not exactly in the squared forms. So instead of 4f squared, I know that that term is square of 2f. And then the second one, the 64, is square of 8. Now if I write it in this form, if you still remember, a squared minus b squared is the same as a minus b times a plus b. So that means take the difference of the numbers and times it by the sum of the numbers. The first number is 2f, the second number is 8 in this case. Subtract them and then add them. That's it, we factored it out. Next one, 7x squared minus 14x. First step is take out the common number or terms from these two. Now I can take out 7x from each one of these. That's the greatest term that I can divide these by. The first one becomes x, and the second one becomes 2 times 7x is going to give me 14x. So this would be the answer. Let's move on to the next one. B squared plus 8b plus 7. If you still remember what we did in here, we are going to do the same. So b squared, we can break this one down as b times b. And then 7 can be written as 7 times 1. Now, if we do cross multiply, b times 1 is positive 1b. b times 7 is 7b. If we add these together, we get 8b, which is the term that I'm looking for. So that means these are the right numbers to choose. I can pair these two and then these two by writing b plus 7 times b plus 1. Now that one is done as well. So the next question. First step, remember, is take out the common numbers or variables that you see that belongs to each of these terms. 21, 18, and 24 can be divided by 3. So I'm going to take out the 3 first. Also, the first term has x cubed. The second one is x squared. The third one has x in it. All of them has x, so we can take one out too. If I divide 21 by 3, I get 7. X cubed divided by x is x squared. This is what I have from the first term. The second term, 18 divided by 3 is 6. X squared divided by x gives me an x. Y stays the same. Plus 24 divided by 3 is 8. X divided by x, that will cancel out. Y squared stays the same. So now we can try to factor this expression out and then see if we can go any further. 7x can be written as 7x squared can be written as 7x times x. And then 8y squared can be written as 8y times 8y. 8y times y, sorry. Now let's see if these pairs are right. Now what I have, if I do cross multiply for 7x times y, if I multiply these two, let me be more clear, I get 7x times y. 7xy from that. And then if I multiply these two, I get 8 times x times y. If I add these together, I get 15xy. And if I try to change both of these signs, because I realize that this sign is negative, it still won't work because these are going to be negative, and if I add them together, it's going to make up negative 15xy. So that means these numbers are not right. But remember, we don't know if this can be factored anymore. Instead of 8y times y, I'm going to try this time 4y times 2y. Now, if I multiply these two, both of them is going to be negative, because the sum is negative 6. Now, if I do cross multiply, this gives me negative 14, this gives me negative 4. If we add them together, we get negative 18. If we add them together, we get negative 18. This doesn't help me as well. This one was wrong. This one was wrong. Now, let's try one more, because there's one more possible way. Let me see. No, there's no more way. So that means we cannot factor this one out any further. This would be the final answer. Now, let's move on to the next question. A squared plus 7a minus 18. A can be written as a times a. 18 can be written as 9 times 2. If we multiply these two numbers, we will get a negative number. That means one of them is going to be negative, either 9 or 2. Since the sum of these numbers must be positive 7, the smaller number must be negative. The greater one is going to be positive. Now, let's do the math. Negative 2a comes from these two. Positive 9a comes from that. Positive 9a and negative 2a. If we add these together, we get what we need, positive 7a. So that means we can pair the first row and the second row. A plus 9 times a minus 2. So that's it for the factoring part. Let's solve a couple questions solving polynomials. Now, at first we are going to factor the polynomials out, and then we are going to get the variable by itself. The first one, a cubed, a squared, and a. We can take out the a from all of these. We would end up with a squared minus 9. A squared divided by a gives me an a, plus 14a divided by a is just 14. Bring down the equal and the 0 on the right side. Now, what we have on the left side is two expressions multiplied to 0. In that case, either the first term should be equal to 0, the first term was a, set it up to 0, or the second term, the whole thing, should be equal to 0. So right now, what we have is a quadratic equation that we can factor out. I'm gonna, instead of a squared, I'm gonna write a times a. Instead of 14, I'm gonna write 7 times 2. Now, the multiplication of these two is gonna be positive. That means either both of these are positive or both of these are negative. Since the sum is gonna be negative, the numbers must be negative as well. Now, we're gonna pair these two. and pair these two. So the answer would be a minus 7 times a minus 2 equals 0. I knew these numbers were right because when I multiply these two, I get negative 2a. When I multiply these two, I get negative 7a, which leads me to negative 9a, which is the term that I was looking for. Now let's move on. Right now, I still have two expressions that are multiplied to 0. Either the first one is going to be 0, a minus 7, or this one is going to be 0, a minus 2. Add 7 on both sides for this one, a would be equal to 7. Add 2 on each side for this one, a would be positive 2. Now the next question, I'll need some space for this one. X cubed equals 3x squared. Let's divide each side by x squared to get rid of one of these at least. Now on the right side, what I have is 3. On the left side, x cubed divided by x squared. Subtract the exponents. 3 minus 2 is 1. So we have the answer. It didn't take too much time. Now the next question. First, take out the common terms that you see. I realize that t squared is common for each one of these. So t to the power of 4 divided by t squared is t squared minus 3 times t minus 40 equals 0. Now what I have is two expressions multiplied to 0. Here's how we solve it. Follow the same pattern. Either the first one is equal to 0 or the second one is equal to 0. If the first one is equal to 0, that means t squared is 0, which leads us to this. Take square root of both sides, we end up with t equals 0. Now, this one is another quadratic that we can factor out. Break down the t squared by doing t times t, and then 40 can be written as 8 times 5. Now, when I multiply these two numbers, I need to get a negative 40, which means one of these is going to be negative. The sum is going to be a negative. That means the greater number should be negative. The greater one is 8, it should be negative. Now, let's do the math. Times these two, we get positive 5t. Times these two, minus 8, which gives us what we need, which is this. So that means the numbers were right. We can pair these two and these two. T minus 8 times t plus 5 equals 0. Same pattern. Again, two terms multiplied to 0. Either the first one should be equal to 0 or the second one should be equal to 0. So this gives us t equals 8. That one gives us t equals negative 5. So the last one here has another common factor. So b can be taken out from b cubed. We end up with b squared. B squared divided by b is going to give me a b, but negative 8b plus positive 16b. If I divide it by b, I get plus 16 equals 0. Now, again, we have the same pattern. Two terms multiplied to 0. Either the first one, which is b, would be equal to 0. Here's one solution of the equation. Or b squared minus 8b plus 16 would be equal to 0. So this is another thing that we can break down. B squared can be written as b times b. 16 can be written as 4 times 4. The sum is going to be negative 8. When I multiply these numbers, I need to get positive 16. So the numbers I am looking for is negative 4 and negative 4. Now pair these two and these two. B minus 4 times b minus 4 equals 0. Either this one is 0 or that one is 0. Since both of them are the same, I'm just going to solve one of them. If b minus 4 equals 0, we add 4 on each side to end up with b equals 4.